All right, so hello, my name is Austin, and today I'm going to talk to you about making a passion project. And so I'll tell you a little about myself here. My name is Austin Schneider. I'm a freshman majoring in computer science. And fun fact, I like climbing at the Baki. It's really fun. And in CS, I'm interested in web dev and programming languages and compilers, which I'll touch on in a little bit. And I started programming through Minecraft. And so I just want to take this first part as kind of like a imagine along, I suppose. So I want you to imagine yourself as a beginner programmer, like never programmed before. You're taking your first CS 200 class, and you're also using IntelliJ instead of Eclipse because Eclipse sucks. But this UI is, it might be different in Eclipse, but in IntelliJ there's a few things to this UI, right? So on the left here, you have your file directory and structure. On the left, you have your run, build, console, warning, branches, I think. On the top there, you have your version control. What's a version control for the beginner programmer, right? And then the main, that's the artifact selected, like what you build. And then your run and debug. On the right is IntelliJ notifications, and like the little swirly thing, I think, is IntelliJ's new AI features. And the bottom here, there's some weird lines of text. And then you have your hello world, the actual output that's in between these two weird lines. And oh yeah, then I forgot, of course, the actual editor itself where you type. And so this UI has a lot of fluff to it. So this is really what a beginner programmer needs to see, right? You have your code editor, your file structure with your source files, and then finally, of course, your console output. And then, so I'll go back to the old version here. But there's one line of code that, or not line of code, there's one detail here that I kind of want to emphasize, and it's this line right here. So it is super long, right? This window, this like a tab bar or whatever, it's only a third of the entire size. So this line of text, very long. So I'll enlarge it here. But this is the entire line in that console output. And there's some weird Java agent stuff. There's some file encoding, class path. But when I first started to program in Java using IntelliJ, there's one thing that really perplexed me. And that was the java.exe, right? Because when I think of running my program, right, I think I am making an executable, right? And executable, I expect it to just like double click, and then boom, there's my app right there. But I'm not calling main.exe. I'm calling java.exe, which I found that super, super weird. And then at the end, I'm also passing in my main class. And so I came to this realization that Java is a programming language, but it's also a program that runs your program. So you're not running main.exe, which is like the executable. You're passing, well, this is an oversimplification, but you're passing the text that's in your main class, and you are giving that to java.exe to run and interpret it. And Java is something called an interpreted language. And so I'm going to fast forward a little bit in my programming experience. I was playing Minecraft a lot when I was a kid. And specifically, I was playing this one server called Diamondfire. I think I have approximately 5,000 hours in this single server. But the about me here, it says that Diamondfire is a Minecraft server where you can create your own games with a visual programming language based on regular blocks and items. So essentially, it's a little bit like Scratch, except if it were in Minecraft. So I'll show you a little bit of Diamondfire code. So this is a game, quote unquote, but it has these blocks which do things. So this diamond block here, this is a player event block. And this one happens to be whenever the player joins your game, it runs this action which to the player, which sends a message. And to pass arguments, you put it in the chest there. And in this case, it's just a hello world whenever the player joins your game. And so you can think of these chests as basically like function arguments. And so I'll show you a little bit more Diamondfire code. So when the player joins your game, it checks if the player's name is equal to something. I think in this case, I put it to my own name. And then it runs whatever's in these brackets, right? And so, or I should say pistons, not brackets. So these pistons are essentially like curly braces, right? They denote a scope. It's in a conditional. And so it runs the player action, which gives myself a diamond sword. And if you think about this coding system for a second, you'll realize that it can probably get super long super quickly, right? Because what is in a normal programming language is probably a one-liner. This represents about 8 blocks worth of Minecraft. And so it can get complicated and super long very quickly. So this is a very simple, it's a relatively simple game. It's a puzzle game where you have specific elements on a grid and you rotate them around in order for electricity to pass through them. And so what if I gave you this code and I asked you to fix a bug where the levels weren't loading? It's really hard. And when I used to code on Diamondfire, oh my God, I would set the wrong variable in some random place, and I'd debug that for hours. And to give you a bit of a larger scale, this is the most popular Diamondfire game. It's really, really, really tall. And I think that even goes beyond render distance. So there's even more code to this, right? So this must be a pain to debug. And it is a pain to debug. So this was very hard. Or I came up with the idea, well, there are multiple people who came up with this idea of why don't we try to emulate traditional programming and then kind of port that over to Diamondfire. And so I made this project called Flamma. And so the Flamma is a statically typed programming language, which means it has types. And it transpiles to Diamondfire templates. And you might not have heard of that word transpiles before. That's essentially taking one programming language and then doing some stuff to it, and then the output is a different programming language, which is in this case, Diamondfire code. And so this is a tiny little example. So of course, you declare a variable. There's type inference, so you don't need the string there. And then the print statement is for debugging when you want to send the player a message. But if you want to interface with any of the other player actions, like giving them experience or giving them items or sending them a title or displaying a hologram, any of that stuff, you have to use this weird syntax, which is just basically a correlation to Diamondfire templates. So that's essentially a foreign function interface, if you know what that means, which you don't need to. And so I am very, very proud, or I guess I was very, very proud of it. I still am when I made this, because it was the largest program I'd ever built at the time. And it's very, very complicated, because when you think of programming languages, that's like usually up there with the level of practical difficulty as like operating systems, right? And so I was very proud of this at the time. So I consider it to be a passion project. And so I kind of want to step you through how you could make your own project like this. And I'll be stepping through my own examples, right? So how do you start in 3 very simple steps? Well, I just wrote that because it's 0. And the 0th step is to come up with an idea. And so a passion project, of course, passion is literally in the name. You have to find something you're interested in. And for that case, for me, it was Minecraft, because I was just obsessed with Minecraft at the time. And the first real step, I guess, is do some research, because you have to find a place to start, of course. And what I did was I went on this subreddit called r/programming languages. And kind of a useful tip here, if you're ever searching Google and you ever want Reddit results, you can just tag on at the end here, site:/reddit.com. And that works with specific subreddits too, if you need a specific kind of range of knowledge. And so that's what I did. And so I just Googled best place to start, and this thread came up with a reply from Lorixu. And they said they couldn't recommend crafting interpreters enough. And Crafting Interpreters is a book by Bob Nystrom. If you're ever interested in making your own programming language, I would highly recommend this book. It is such a good book. It's also free on the web. But just find some resource, whether that be like a React tutorial, or maybe how to make a backend server in Go, or anything like that. Just do some preliminary research, right? And the second step is to try, and you'll probably also fail. But failing is a very useful thing, because you don't just scrap the project and move on, because you have gained very valuable experience. And so these are my amount of attempts that are on GitHub, because I have many, many more on a backed up hard drive. So these are the ones that I thought were to an level to put on GitHub. So I have to have tried at least 10 times, whether that be just the first file, or maybe building it out to the Lexer or something, but then giving up at a certain point. But the point is to just try, and you'll fail, and that's totally okay, because you'll learn something for the next attempt. And the third one is, of course, to have fun. And then maybe at the end, you might have something, you might have a result. But even if you don't, you gain so much experience from just trying to create something that it's an invaluable experience to create a passion project. And so what I want you to come out of here today is that the ones or the projects that you have fun with the most, that you enjoy doing, often come from a personal passion. And of course, do things that bring you intrinsic value, because either way, whether you succeed or you fail, you'll have some fun doing it, and you'll gain a new skill. But that's all I have today.